I was getting slightly nervous there that Katie had picked up my entire speech and was reading it to you. Here we go. I'm glad to hear that, according to Alan de Botton, we're all mad. So that's nice to know. So I'm amongst friends, because I consider myself a bit mad. Also, we shouldn't be too glad or happy in the organisations where we work. So I'll try and sort of tone that down a bit, but forgive me if cheerfulness breaks in. It's a pathology that I have. So as Katie said, I'm going to really talk to you about some of the work that we do. And my brief here is to try and entertain you a little bit, share something new with you, maybe provoke a little bit of thinking, try and excite and engage you a little, and really show you how you might make a difference tomorrow, next week, and so on in your own organisation. So that's the sort of brief. And I think we live at a really interesting time. So many of you may have seen a curve like this, and we're here, roughly where we are. So if you look at knowledge doubling or the pace of change, I basically hear two opinions as we go around talking to organisations. That, yeah, but it's always change, you know, who changes the constant and blah, blah, blah. But actually, there's something fundamental now about the nature of change today, that the exponential curve is exponential. So I think we live at this moment now, probably the most exciting moment in the history of mankind. So if you're as old as I am, you know, remembering the days before colour television and what we're leaning into now in the singularity and so on, it's absolutely phenomenal and terribly exciting, because who knows what's going to happen. So that's pretty exciting, and it's going to fundamentally change everything about how we work and how we show up. But there's an interesting paradox going on. As everything is changing at an incredible speed, there are some things that never change. So if you watch the BBC News, you may have had a similar experience to me, where you sit down and watch the news, and you hear the same old story that you've been hearing for 10 years about climate change or poverty or immigration or human trafficking, the healthcare is in crisis, education is ill-affordable and it's terrible and we've got to go back to basic. And you've been hearing the same story year in, year out. So there's this accelerating change, and then some things seem to be stuck. And one of the reasons they're stuck is they're what we call wicked problems. Not wicked in the sense of evil, but wicked in the sense of uber complicated, and they're difficult to break through. So we've got these two things going on, this accelerating pace of change where everything's going to be different, and then some things that are profoundly stuck. And you might see this in your own organisation, right? So this interesting paradox. So, you know, I thought a lot about that, like, what do we do? Like, what's the approach, and why are we so stuck, and what do we really need to do? Because we're literally in over our heads. This is a phrase from Robert Keegan, who's the professor of education at Harvard. He says that if you research and survey you know, senior executives, the majority of them feel like they're struggling to cope with this ever pace of change, and it's complex and all of this, and they're in over their heads. And most people feel this sense of overwhelm. You know, the water's getting deeper. I think this guy looks like he's breathing out of a twig here, you know, which is, you know, what it feels like, I think, sometimes. So we're in over our heads with this accelerating pace of change, and it's complicated. So what is it to do? Given all of that. What do we do about all of this? And so our view is that you've got to take a different perspective, see the world and the reality in which you exist slightly differently. So we've got this sort of view that came out of some research that we did interviewing CEOs around the world and what they pay attention to. And there are basically, as Katie alluded to, these sort of three dimensions. And almost universally, most execs pay attention to what's in front of them, and it's the world of it. What is it that we need to do? What are the tasks? What are the objectives? What are the goals? What are the targets? And I'm focused entirely on doing that. I've got a long to-do list. And when I finish that to-do list, I've got another to-do list. In fact, I've got a to-do list to do my to-do list. So it's relentless, you know, and we never feel like we get ahead of it. And the reason that's in front of us is we don't notice there's these other two dimensions to our life, because they're behind us. So when you start to talk to people about what's going on in their lives, they largely focus on what needs to be done. And in fact, we've heard some of that today. So all three dimensions exist. So Helmut, for example, spoke a little bit about the technology changes that are coming. Amy about brand and the consistency of internal and external. And even Alan de Botton talked about capitalist systems. So this is the world out there, the rational, objective world, and it exists for all of us. But there are these other two worlds, these other two dimensions that also exist in every moment of our life. Because while we're doing stuff, attending a conference, there's an inner world going on. So while I'm talking to you right now, you're all, hopefully, having thoughts, right? And you're having sort of feelings, this guy's rubbish, or whatever it is, that's going on inside of you. Nobody can see it. There's an inner world. And when we're overwhelmed with the stuff out there, we can lose contact with what's going on in here. Right? We become obsessed. And we think the answer to our problem, and if the problem exists out there, the answer is out there. We don't realize the answer might be in here. You know, how we are and who we are as human beings, how we show up in the world. Who is the human being that turns up to do the doing? Who is the being that does the doing? Is there just doing, or is there something important about the being? So we're going to unpack that in a moment. And in addition, some of the speakers already today will have talked a little bit about that. So Martine was really moving about the power of the human spirit. She's talking about what's going on inside her, right? And that was very moving. That's an interior phenomena. You know, and even Ruby was talking about, you know, cognitive and emotional and, you know, which is more important. That's an interior phenomena, the cognitive sophistication that human brings to the party, or their emotional intelligence. Few people have spoken about that. And authenticity, probably the most widely used word in the leadership literature. It's almost like people have authenticity Tourette's. Authenticity! You know, that's the answer. There's something going on inside of us. And it's kind of interesting as a phenomenon, authenticity, because you know, if you don't really know who you are, how can you be authentic to that, right? And we haven't grown up with a tradition in studying the anatomy of the ego, you know, the structure of the self. We're not trained in that. We're trained in HR, or we're trained in marketing, or we're trained in something. You know, we're not trained to understand that. So how can we be true to that when we don't even know what that is? So just to play a little game with you, sometimes we, you know, just to sort of, you know, mess with the minds of the people we work with. We'll say, have you ever had that experience where you may have had this yourself, where you think, God, I'm really fed up with myself today. You know, I am fed up with myself. You ever had that? You think, that's interesting, isn't it? I am fed up with me. Hang on, who's the I and who's the me? Oh my God, there's two people. I'm schizophrenic. Right? And so you can start to unpick, well, who is the I and who is the me? And who is the authentic one? Is it I or is it me? Right? So there's some really interesting stuff going on inside of us that it's almost virgin snow. We're yet to really explore that. So how can you possibly hope to be authentic if you don't know who the I is and you don't know who the me is? And you don't know about what goes on inside of you? You know, and Chris Holmes talked about the importance of purpose. You know, what is the meaning of my life? What am I actually here to do? Again, that's an interior phenomena. And if we have a long to-do list, why I exist as a human being and my actual purpose is something that's going on inside of me. It's not on my to-do list, right? And I've often, you know, in coaching executives, thrown out this question. So you do this job as a chief executive. So why do you exist, right? And when you ask people, what is the point of you? I don't know why I'm pointing at you. What is the... You know, what is the point of you, right? Most people don't know. They don't know what is the point of me. And the first answer is, you know, well, why do I exist? Well, I've got to make money. No, that's a byproduct of what you do, right? What is the point of your existence? And then you get procreation. I said, no, that's the purpose of mankind, right? That's not the purpose of you. What is the point of you? And then you get answers like, you know, husband, father, you know, partner, whatever it is. I say, no, that's the purpose of men and women. That's not the point of you. What is the point of you? So when you disallow money, when you disallow procreation, when you disallow the husband, father, partner, people don't know, right? Why do you exist on the planet? What is the point of your life? And most people, it's a difficult question to answer, right? And I've had this conversation several hundred times with various executives. Most people have not got an answer to that question, either because they've not thought about it because they're too busy doing the to-do list, right? Or if they've had the bravery to think about it, or even worse, after 8 pints or 8 glasses of wine, had that conversation at 3 in the morning with a mate of theirs about the meaning of life. Their mates don't know. Net, no idea. People don't know. It's an interior phenomena, right? So how can you be authentic to that if you don't know what the point of view is? But it's really important, as Chris said, because it drives so much of what we end up doing and the quality with which we do it. And as Alan de Botton said, in the vulnerability, again, an interior phenomena. So there's all these interior phenomena which some of the speakers have alluded to today. This is the world of I, as well as the world of it. So what you've heard is people get obsessed by the world of it, and we also get inspirational speakers talking about the world of I. And you've heard today how important it is. But not many people talked so far, from what I understand, about the world of we. So in addition to an interior phenomena of the world of being, the subjective experience, there's a world of relating. And pretty much organizations are based, the power of organizations and the success of organizations are based on relationship, are they not? The relationship you have with each other, the relationship you have with your customer. But if you look at your week, how many meetings and how much of your time did you spend with the only intention of that time deepening the quality of trust, deepening the strength of that relationship bond? You weren't trying to do anything other than that, right? Now, most people think that's irrelevant in business, right? We've got stuff to do. We've got to get to the to-do list, and we've got to message out and communicate and all of that stuff to do. But actually improving the quality of our interpersonal reactions and responses and how we connect with each other is a whole nother dimension, requires a whole different set of skills. So we say, look, actually there's these 3 dimensions, I, we, and it, that exist in every moment of your life, even this moment. And in fact, the 4th dimension that Katie alluded to, I want to map out here and draw the distinction between people who emphasize different things. So you've got the single-minded business executive. We built the Khalifa Towers to doing, the citadel of action, right? And that's largely where we put all of our energy. And our awareness and our quality and the altitude that we've created in the interpersonal space isn't great. And the self-awareness might be even smaller. So here we've got a pop-up tent, and here's a concrete car park. But we've got the Khalifa Towers of action. So it's sort of slightly out of balance, which is why many people's experience is it's task, transactional, dry doing stuff. And there's something we can't quite put our finger on. It doesn't feel quite right. And then, of course, you'll go and see the spiritual seekers. It's all I. It's all interior development. I sit and meditate for 17 hours on the cushion, cultivating my mindfulness, right? And that's taken me time, and I'm in this incredible flourished garden on the inside. And I've got a couple of relationships, but I don't do much. So the same one-dimensional mistake, just in a different direction, right? And then you get carers. It's all about service, servant leadership. I'm there constantly giving with 2 hands to others. That's the meaning of my life. I want to give to you, and I give to you, and I give to you, and I haven't got a hand free to take anything because I'm too busy giving to you. Right? And that's the caring crowd. Many of these people are in charities or in the healthcare. And of course, what happens is they get exhausted and tired. They don't look after themselves, and it's difficult to get stuff done because they're too busy in the service of others. And what we're saying is actually what we need to do in this rapidly changing world with these complex problems is we need to develop altitude in all 3 dimensions. Right? So the 4th dimension is the altitude, the maturity, the sophistication that we bring to those 3 dimensions. And the problems we've got in the world, particularly these wicked problems, is we develop in one dimension to the exclusion of the other 2. Right? So if you look at all the sort of wars, right, you've got really technologically advanced solutions, weapons of mass destruction in the hands of babies, in the hands of people who don't have the ego maturity or the sophistication to realize that actually just killing each other is a zero-sum game, right? It's not going to take us forward. So in our view, the problem is a lack of matched evolution in these 3 dimensions. There's a lack of altitude in all 3. It's one-dimensional, largely. So I think, in our view, if we can start to cultivate, 4 dimensions, the 3 dimensions and the altitude, then we're in a much better place. And I want to give you a couple of examples of this. So if you go around, as we've done, and say to just any group, who is the most inspirational leader in the last 100 years, alive or dead, in any walk of life, in any country, you kind of come up with Nelson Mandela as your example. Right? And what was interesting is he was locked up for 27 years. He couldn't do anything. There was no doing. And he didn't have anybody to talk to very much, 1 or 2 colleagues and a few rather dull guards. So there was no it and very little we. So he spent his entire life cultivating his interior for 27 years. So when he finally was released and could do something, the power and the impact that he had came from his I. In fact, leadership starts from the inside out. It starts with I. So Martin Luther King's speech, I have a dream, right? I have a dream. He didn't say, you've got a dream. He didn't say there is a dream. He said, I have a dream. That we Americans, we are going to do this. 2 sentences, I, we, it. Brilliant leadership. 4-dimensional leadership, right? And Mandela was an example of that. And if you look at people who worked in the we space, I've had the good fortune of working with Helen and Heather, who won the gold medal in the women's pair at London, and almost certainly, so put your money on this, almost certainly will win the gold medal in Rio, right? And they are really intense in all 3 dimensions. So yes, they work really hard on the technical capability they have, but they also work just as hard on their relationship. So they work on what they're doing. They work really intensely on their relationship and how well they get on, and the degree to which they get on. And they also look at themselves and how well they manage their own state. And they work in all 3 dimensions simultaneously. So that's what results in brilliant leadership, right? Matched development in all dimensions. It's not just about technical capability. And so if you want examples of where this is going on in the world, there's a very good book by Frederick Liu called Reinventing Organizations, and he cites at least 12 examples. Most of these examples, it hasn't yet really got out there on a big scale, but there are some little examples of companies where they put this matched development right at the heart of their organization, where altitude becomes a core principle of operation. Patagonia is a lovely example of that. So this is the biggest one, a $500 million company, right? You can do this at scale. So where do you start? Well, we've got to get away from the one-size-fits-all sheep-dip approach to helping people evolve, right? Because what you really need is to target, laser-focused targeting of the people. Where do you place your bet? Our view is you place your bet on the people that make the biggest difference. And you can get at them through something called network analysis. So you can actually do, if I can get the clicker to roll forward. Are we out of batteries, guys? Can we click it forward? You can actually identify, just by looking, if you're not quite sure where you invest your spend, thank you very much, where you invest your spend, you can look at the system knows even if you don't. If you get asked people who do they turn to for this or that, who do you get your information from, who do you collaborate with, who energizes you, who supports you, who do you trust, you ask these type of questions of the system, the network knows who the key players are, even if you don't. So you can do some network analysis, and rather than sheep dipping everybody, what you can do is identify the key players who, if you invest in them, they will change the entire system. You don't need to do everybody, right? You can target your investment. So particularly in cost-constrained organizations, you can target, you can even look, if you compare different parameters between like stretch and collaboration, right? You can see who's giving you the most collaboration, who's stretching the thinking the most, and you can see the most valuable, the most influential people in your system as based on the network. So you can start to target your intervention to shift the entire system. So this is often a good place to start to cultivate this multi-dimensional approach. Because if we can get you to bring absolutely everything about you, all the difference, all the diversity, right? If you look at the data on the wisdom of crowds, we unlock wisdom through diversity. We don't want a monoculture where everybody's basically saying the same thing. We want the diversity. And if I can get you to bring all of you, and I can bring all of me, then we have all of us. And if we have all of us showing up to our full extent, we can truly transform everything about our own lives and our own experiences. And that's the hope as we move into this complex VUCA world where it's rapidly accelerating. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. Just a couple of questions before you run off. What's the point of view?
It's a long answer, I'm afraid. So my own personal purpose has gone through, so a bit like Doctor Who, I've gone through 7 iterations, and I'm now really a sort of rather quasi sort of meaningless purpose, you know, where I just show up now. So I don't have a to-do that I'm doing anymore. I used to, but it's kind of evolved and it's evolved. So I just am who I am right now, and it's kind of interesting.
And what do people, when you ask people that question or execs that question, what do they tend to come out with? I mean, the ones that actually have got an answer.
So, well, after you've disallowed the initial answers, I mean, the first conversation I had with a guy, he came into a coaching session and said, I'm going to give up. So to give up a six-figure salary, and I said, to do what? And he said, make furniture. So this was an M&A lawyer who was going to just throw it all in to make some cupboards. So we had to have a conversation about his purpose, and basically what it boiled down to is he'd gone to his chief executive with an M&A deal, and the chief executive had blocked him. And his purpose was simply ideal. 2 words, very simple. In fact, all of you can really boil it down to 2, 3, 4 words. And what had happened is his chief exec had blocked him from doing this deal, and the chief exec basically blocked him from being himself. And he got so disillusioned that he was thinking of resigning. But when we flushed this out, we got him to ring the chief executive and go back to him and say, look, I really think we should do this deal, which I persuaded him that he did. And the whole thing changed, because actually on reflection, the chief exec realized he was wrong to block it, and everything changed after that point, because he started actually living true to what he was really about at the core. In fact, he even said, oh my God, when I go shopping with my wife, I'm trying to do a deal on the black skirt. You know, I'm dealing the whole time. So it was all about, for him, the dealing. So everybody's got their own unique. I've done about 500 of these conversations. I've yet to have a repeat on what people are really about at the core.
Okay. One other question about network analysis. You talk about that. What actually, how do you, because it sounds good, but how do you get that information? How do you get that data?
Just online, you 7 or 8 simple questions. It takes about 5 minutes to do. And you get everybody in the system to reference, well, who do you turn to for this, for that, for the other? And then, you know, say out of, I don't know, say that you did the top 70, that's something like 300,000 data points, right? And that data is so rich, you can literally pinpoint, you know, who are the rising stars that you didn't realize? You know, who are the blockers, right? Who are the links between different bits of the organization? Where is the organization working really well cross-functionally? Where is it deeply siloed? And the system knows. The wisdom is in the crowd, not in any one of us. So network analysis is just a way of getting at that, so you can start to target, if you want to really transform your organization, start to target those people who will transform it for you if you know who they are.
Okay, Dr. Alan Watkins, thank you very much.
Thank you, Katie.